This is Kathy's aunt, and this is Motivation Code. And I am so happy to have a special guest here today. Ryan, we had a talk a couple of weeks ago about all of your amazing experiences. It was like, we have got to interview Ryan and his experiences with Salesforce as well as Motivation Code. And you were like, let's jump on this. And
Let's
so I'm
do it.
excited to have you here. Ryan, give us your name, your background, just like a little bio of who you are.
Okay. First and foremost, Kathy, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I know you're busy. I know the MCode team is busy, so I do appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. But hello, world. My name is Ryan Deegan. I just recently left the Salesforce universe. I'm now part of the Salesforce Alumni Network, effective mid-June. Spent 14 years at Salesforce, running a big part of the channel, the ISV channel partners. It started as a rep, ended as a VP, and it was an incredible journey. Prior to Salesforce, I spent 10 years at Oracle. And of those 10 years, 7 of them were I was a direct seller, and then 3 of them were in the partner universe. And that's ultimately what led me to Salesforce.
Amazing. What does ISV stand for exactly?
Oh, good question. ISV stands for Independent Software Vendor, third
Okay.
party software companies.
Okay, great. So you're working with software companies and helping them to use Salesforce, and you're managing teams of people?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the job was fundamentally 3 parts, right? The job was number 1 to work with independent software vendors to convince them that their intellectual property, the thing that they did best, was best positioned when it was built on Salesforce. So once you have that art of the possible sort of approach to the architecture, the total addressable market defined, the next thing that we would do is we'd set terms and conditions in place, which allowed the partner to sell this combined solution, this thing that we have built together, out into the world, whether that was to existing Salesforce customers or customers who had never used Salesforce before. And then once those T's and C's were in place, we effectively put sales and marketing teams around the partner to help them accelerate their growth, right? To help them accelerate their business. And the model was the partner success was our success. So it was a nice kind of flywheel approach to working together.
Amazing. Now, you took Motivation Code just recently, right? How did you hear about it and what got you into looking at what motivates you?
Yeah, no, it was one of your colleagues, a guy by the name of Steve Hansen, reached out when he saw my LinkedIn post saying, "Hey, Salesforce, thanks, or figure out what's next." He immediately reached out and said, "Hey, I'd love to catch up." And I've known Steve a long time, right? Steve
Yeah.
is an incredible person. And from my earliest days at Salesforce, he and I were pretty simpatico. He and I clicked as he was working for a company called BMC, right, at the time. And BMC was a very strategic partner for Salesforce because we didn't have a presence in the middle office. The company was traditionally known as a CRM company, front office. You got partners like SAP in the back office, but BMC brought some visibility to the middle office. And Steve
Yeah.
was a very important person in that partnership. And he and I were worked very closely together. He reached out and he wanted to catch up on lots of things because that's the kind of person he is. But ultimately, organically, we got to this topic around MCode and what he was doing. And boy, I'm glad we did.
Yeah. How was the process of taking the assessment for you?
Mm, that's a great question. I struggled with it a little bit at first, right? I think when I first looked at the process and I looked at having to reflect and think about the answers that I needed to provide, I think I started to frame it like I've taken these compliance trainings before. It's something that I just need to do to check a box to ultimately make sure I'm not into a penalty box. And I had to really sit and reflect in order to do a good job. And for me personally, I thought I did a great job on the first story. I was like, okay, what's next? And then it asked for another story. And I was like, ah. All right. So I had to step away from the computer, maybe even do something else, come back. So it was an iterative process to get
Mm.
to completion. But I think that's the power of what those inputs drove as far as an output, because forcing me to reflect, forcing me to really peel that onion back, forcing me to think about the questions that I was being asked were incredible to ultimately what I saw when it was ready.
Yeah. So doing that reflection and doing that work, it was worth it in the long run?
Oh, 100%. I'm glad I did. But for me personally, I don't think I understood I don't think I understood what I was doing at the time. I think Steve set it up and he set a tone for what this was, but he didn't lead the witness. He let me get to that like result on my own. So yeah, it was a cool journey. It really was.
Yeah. So many people who come to MCode are coming because they're in a coaching program or their coach is, okay, let's take a look at who you are. And so there's already some context around it. So coming into it fresh from your perspective of just like your friend Steve suggested this,
Yeah.
it's more like you're like dropped into this airport and it's like, all right, where's my flight?
Right.
I don't know exactly where to go. So I can see how that could be a little discombobulating. But ultimately, your results came back. And what were your motivational dimensions?
Yeah. So the top three that came back were number one, I'm a driver. So as a driver, you're somebody who's focused on achieving a goal and exceeding that goal. Number two, I'm a relator. I am somebody who likes to forge deep and meaningful relationships. And then number three, I'm an achiever. And an achiever is somebody who's trying to lift up the standards of the overall team or the group that they're with and not settling for the status quo. And there's lots of actual uh, things that I am, but those were the top three.
All right. When you got your report and you saw all of your motivational dimensions and so that like periodic table of motivation, what was your first impression?
Yeah. I was shocked, right? I was
Yeah.
shocked in a good way. And I remember seeing the information come back and I almost laughed out loud. Like I was just like, oh my gosh. Because the reflection of what I saw and who I am, it was so dynamic. It was like I was looking at myself in kind of a 4K format, right? Where I was actually seeing a 360-degree view of who I am and why I am. And I just remember texting Steve. And I remember going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And he knew right away that I had finished the result because I think he has an administrator license. So he could see when that was completed. And he's, I knew it. I knew it. You were going to be XYZ. And so we just had this moment where we just had to talk about it. Kathy, candidly, it was like a reflection into my soul, right, of who I am and what I am. And it's powerful stuff because I'd never seen anything like that before.
Were there any insights that really resonated with you or just maybe looking back at your life, your career at Salesforce and Oracle, where you're just like, oh, that makes so much sense now?
Yeah. So look, if I reflect back at my time at Oracle, I didn't really hit my groove as a working human until I got into the partner world, right? Like I got
Mhm.
into it. I like this, right? I like this. And I remember again, like leaving Oracle and going to Salesforce back in 2010 because it was this disruptive company. It was a new business model. And the only way we could do it was with partners, right? We needed partners to go to market in a way that has never been done before. And when I heard that, I'm like, yes, I want to do that. That makes sense. But it was all like on the hunch, like this made sense, right? Like the intrinsic idea that my gut was telling me to do it, not necessarily the fact that I knew I should do it, right? Because that's where my strengths were. So number one, seeing the data come back, it was almost like it defined the fact that I was in the right job, right? That I
Yeah.
was in the right seat, that I was doing the right things. That again, that's what got me up in the morning. It kept me going. It was like the right model. And then number two, it reaffirmed the fact that I love to collaborate. Like I am somebody who collaborates. And again, when you're in an ecosystem and you're setting up a really crazy, impossible partnership, you have to bring people together. And we used to talk about like when you're doing something impossible and it requires cross functional alignment to do this impossible thing, we used to call it the foxhole. And you get into the foxhole and it can get cold and it can get lonely because you're the only ones in the foxhole who are holding this thing together because you need to get it done. But you learn a lot about your team, right? You learn a lot about your team. You learn a lot about yourself and like inspires you to not just survive it, but to really enjoy that process. So like when I think about what I got from the MCode feedback, it was like, yeah, I'm in the right universe, the right spectrum of what I am doing and what I'm good at. And then number two, that's why we were able to do so many incredible things was because I love to collaborate. So
Yeah.
it was like a reaffirmation of what my gut was always telling me.
Sure. Yeah. I know hindsight is 2020 and you can look back and it makes all of that make sense. Are there any situations or things that you would have done differently had you taken motivation code earlier in your career?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Loaded question on that one. How many times, Kathy, have you seen a TV show or a movie, right? And the main character goes, "Man, if I only knew now what I didn't know then, right? Like
Sure.
if I oh like," and again, like you've seen that sort of narrative play out in so many different ways. That was so far fetched. I used to think that is not something that's ever possible. Like that's just crazy talk. This is real. This is real stuff. So if I think about what it means to the workforce today, if I think about what it means to people like myself who are in the workforce looking for what's next, it's incredible because it's providing clarity and just focus on who you are, what you do, and why you should be doing it. And that is something that it's gold. It just is really, truly gold.
And especially as I think back at, like, even my own career, if I knew other people's dimensions, if I knew that I had a relator, an influencer, and a driver on my teams, how I would have communicated with them would have changed. Did you have any kind of insights about that, how it would have changed you as a leader?
Oh my gosh, yes. So let's think about it from a macro perspective. Where has the world gone in the corporate universe? At least for the world that I was living in with high tech software companies, partners, stuff like that. You have heard the term grow at all costs, right? Grow to profitability, right? A
Mm,
pivot to profitability, a pivot to the rule of 40, a pivot to show me the margin that needs to be 30%. Like the bottom line is we can't just grow at all costs. We need to show that we are changing the way that we do business. So number one, and that has been a complete like earth shattering sort of moment for the industry. Two, again, we're coming out of COVID in 2021, 2022, and you have this renaissance of how employees are thinking, right? It's no longer the status quo of I just go to my job 5 days a week and I do this and maybe I get promoted. And it is, wait a minute, what do I want out of my job? What do I want out of my job? I want work life balance. I want real guidance on career growth and development. I want to work for a company that I can appreciate their culture. I need purpose for what I'm doing. And if you look at those two things in a vacuum, like if you look at those two elements in a vacuum, it's almost like they shouldn't relate. Like they're pushing against each other. But what's incredible about this technology is that it flips the narrative, which says, hey, look, they can relate because if I'm a leader and I know that you work in a certain style and somebody else works in a certain style, and I put those two people together, what am I doing? I'm increasing the bottom line because I'm increasing employee performance. And then number two, I'm making my employees happy because they're doing what they want to do. And in the old world, I think a manager again had to go on their gut. Like, I
yeah.
think Kathy's like this. I think Ryan's like that. I think if I put these two things together, it will work. Now you have this like legitimately 60 years worth of data science that proves that it will work. And that is just you want to talk about benefiting both sides of the coin. It's incredible.
Definitely. I really think it not only gives people that confidence in themselves that for me personally, I'll just tell a personal story because I really appreciate optimizers and orchestrators, those types of people who are just like organized, like completely organized. I will not show you my garage or my pantry or even my desk. I'm a mess. I'm a visionary and an influencer. And I do like things, I appreciate people who can organize things very well. But I know it's not me. And I got to not put pressure on myself to be something that I'm really not. Like, I'll leave that to the project managers and the orchestrators, the optimizers, those people who are really good at. So it gives me more confidence to just lean in on the things I want to do. And it gave me so much more freedom. And I would imagine for leaders, it's got to give them that type of confidence in and being able to really like coach that confidence with the people that report to them.
Oh, without a doubt. It's an incredible asset. It's a powerful asset that I just feel has not been made available to some of the world's most innovative companies, right? And again, and you're talking about big companies where you're putting two orchestrators together and they're expecting them to get something done and there's friction, right? And
Yeah.
it's the job's taking a little bit longer than it should to get done and like that creates downstream effects of we're not being as productive as we can. We're not driving as much margin as we can. We're not being as efficient as we can, and our employees aren't happy because there's this inherent friction. You don't really know why.
Yeah.
So it's in a technology that I really feel like the term like rising tide lifts all ships. It really has that kind of mindset.
Okay. I have a question about what is it like What's it like to be a leader where you don't understand your people? Does it create like a lot of stress for a leader when you're like trying to figure that stuff out? What kinds of things have leaders done in the past in order to do that kind of stuff that motivation code now solves?
Yeah, it is. And again, I was managing a very large team, again, upwards of 100 people. And when you have 100 people, you've got 7 or 8 directs, and then there's leaders for leaders, and everybody's looking for what's next for me. And it's really hard to understand and how to manage that. And you can have your standard one on one meetings, right? You can have a running list of, okay, let's talk about what you think you want and what you want to do. But a lot of times I would tell my directs, if you can't tell me what you want, I can't really give you what you need. And so I was always like forcing it back on the rep or the RVP to
Mhm.
say, help me understand where you want to go, because I don't know where you want to go. And I always felt like that was a hard line to hold, right? Because I should know. I wanted to know. And I think now I can know, right?
Yeah.
Which creates that ability for people to go, you know what? I am going to stay a little bit longer. I am going to work on the weekend. Ryan's got my back. Ryan understands me. The company understands me. Or, you know what? Like, I've been in this role. Maybe this isn't the right role for me. Like, I need to be in a different role, because this is where I optimize like who I am. So
Yeah.
it is an incredibly unspoken anxiety as a manager and as a leader of leaders, for sure.
Cool. Thank you for that insight. It sounds like leadership and coaching are very similar. And I know a lot of motivation code users are coming in from the coaching world, and we've got a number of large organizations and leaders that are doing it. But I see now how those things kind of relate. So that insight was really
Yeah,
helpful for me. Thank
thanks.
you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
So, as a leader, it's so important that you hire good people, that you hire the right people for the job. Looking back at your previous career at Salesforce and Oracle, were there times when you just knew you had the right people around you? And knowing what you know about motivation code now, how could that help you like hire the right people?
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely true. The world that we're living in today is everybody needs to do more with less, right? So these people need to be pretty dynamic to begin with. They need to be specialized. And again, hiring is critical in the world that we're living in. But when I was at Salesforce, there were absolutely moments in time where I knew some of the people that I worked with, if I didn't have them working with me, this thing that we were trying to do would not get done. And specifically, my operations person at Salesforce, who will go unnamed at this point, she was an optimizer, right? She was somebody that exhibited qualities that I did not. So when I
Mhm.
brought a very complex, unnatural, doesn't fit the types of norms that we typically fell into with the ISV partner program, and said, hey, I think I can do this, but I only had part of the information. She was my kind of my like left hand if I was the right hand, in order to bring those two things together. But at the time, I didn't know that she was categorized as an optimizer. I just knew that she had some capabilities and some traits that I didn't, right? And I
Mhm.
just had to find that in a way that, again, clumsily, I got to it. But yeah, absolutely. There are countless examples of that. And candidly, Kathy, I think that was one of the things I was so proud about at Salesforce, was there really was a collection of individuals that worked together. But yeah, that information was just really hiding in plain sight. And
Yeah.
we didn't know how to tap into it.
Yeah, so you intuitively knew this person compliments me. This person has things that I can't do. If you had motivation code at that time, it probably would have explained, okay, I've got an optimizer here. I've got someone who does these types of things. Take the pressure off of me. And
Yeah.
then next time you need to hire someone for a similar type of situation, you've got some directive of who to look for, right?
Yes, completely. And that goes back to, if I had this information as 18-year-old Ryan, what would I do with it?
Yeah,
And that's just incredibly powerful stuff. As you think about the hiring process, you always get into this conversation as an interviewer and as interviewee, where you get into this dance of strengths and weaknesses, right?
sure.
You get into this idea of, what have you done in the past? And this really frames it.
Yeah,
And if I could go to you, Kathy, if you were interviewing me and I could say, let me
yeah,
tell you what I do well, right? That is a whole different conversation than what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. And I
right.
say that because I used it today. I used it today. I had an interview today, and I got into that conversation and I said, "Hey, let me tell you about me. I'm a driver." And when I said that, the interviewer, he sat up and he said, "Oh," and we double clicked into it and we double clicked into the trait and what that meant. So it's a proof point for, yeah, this type of information is companies are looking for it. It's
Yeah.
important. So,
So then that conversation becomes less about your past, less about the skills that you have, less
right.
about what you've done, and more about really who you are.
Yeah.
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 That's really important because there's tons of people who are not in the right job fit. There's tons of people, all of the research is showing that motivation out there in the corporate world is a problem. People are not in a job that really totally fulfills them as an individual. But if they know who they are and they can go to an interview and say, this is who I am, this is what I bring to the table as a cultural fit for your organization, it changes the conversation. It changes the interview, doesn't it?
Completely. You go from perceived confidence, right? And you're
Yeah.
trying to explain who I am to, all right, I'm not shaping fog anymore. I can get really prescriptive. I can get really prescriptive on how I can benefit this team, how I can benefit this company, and how the company can benefit me. Like this is a win really for everybody.
Yeah, and it just opens so many doors rather than someone trying to really like orchestrate, okay, here's how all the cogs are going to work together in this organization. It opens up this flow of energy and innovation and creativity because people are in the right seat. The square pegs are going in the square holes, the round pegs are going in the round holes, and people are really going where they are, that inner fulfillment that everybody seeks.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And it might be a little off topic, but I do think it's important to know. Again, what was so powerful about this feedback that I got from the MCode assessment wasn't so much the fact that, again, you saw the primary strengths and my motivations. It also opened up a different vector of some blind spots. When I think about myself, if you haven't guessed at this point, I love partners. I love collaborating. I love a team environment. I think, again, you can do incredible things if you really don't care who gets credit. But as somebody who is driven by collaboration, is driven to we can do this together, I can be a little judgmental potentially if somebody doesn't want to work with the team, right? Because they might be better off in an individualistic approach, right? They might be somebody who says,
Yeah.
"Hey, we can get to the same output, but I'm going to do it. I got this." And I need to be cognizant of the fact that, oh, that is my strength, but it can also be a little bit of a weakness too. So you just need to make sure that you understand those dynamics. And that was incredible feedback.
So you're interviewing. How are you going to bring motivation code forward? Like, what if you're in another role and you have to build a team? How are you going to use motivation code?
Hopefully, I'm going to use it a lot. I think this is something that is, if you just have the ability to take a step back and give the team the ability to take this assessment, you can use this analytics. People are craving for this kind of structure. I truly believe
Yeah,
it. They want it. They want it from their managers. They want it from their company. They want this like understanding that and I
yeah,
think that in itself is going to, again, open up like economies of scale
yeah.
for, again, a happier team, a more productive team, a more lucrative team, right? And a team that everybody's going to want to fight to work for. Yeah, it's something I've got in my back pocket without a doubt.
That sounds exciting. I
Yeah.
think it sounds very cool. So if somebody was sitting on the fence looking at motivation code, wondering whether or not they should take that assessment for themselves, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. Look, trust the process, right?
Yeah.
Trust the process that, again, what you're talking about is an incredible piece of technology backed by 60 years of data science that really can define what makes you amazing, like how unique you are. And again, this is not just about the topical, I have three variables that I am. Like you are looking at yourself in a true 4K kind of mindset. And
Yeah.
that is something that, whether you work for Salesforce or you work for Oracle or you work for the next big company, you can take that with you forever, right? This is your kind of your personal assessment of this is what makes me, right? And I need to figure out like where does me fit into the next chapter of the company that I work for. So trust the process. It's incredible. And yeah, just don't rush it. Don't rush it either.
Right.
Think about the stories, reflect, It's okay to come back the next day. Like just really be present and really lean into it.
Definitely. And have you seen the report? It's got all kinds of things in there where you can build out your bio on LinkedIn and things that you can like add to your resume or add to all of your social media to really like showcase who you
Right.
are. So if somebody is doing a job search, you can really anchor everything into who you really are instead of trying to go please this external company you haven't even met yet. You have no idea. So better to just anchor into yourself. So I think that report is so, so helpful. Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you think I should?
Again, I think for me, I think what it has done, big picture, is it's created more self awareness on who I am. Right. So this isn't just about Ryan, the corporate person. This is about Ryan. And again, I'm more self aware now to some of the inherent traits that I've seen are out there. So it makes you a better spouse, right? Or a better friend, right? So there are lots of tangential ways that this, will just impact, the human that you are. And it's something that just keeps on giving every day.
It does. It is the gift that keeps on giving. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Ryan. If somebody wanted to connect with you, had any questions, or maybe they want to hire you, where could they find you online?
Yeah, yeah. LinkedIn is probably the easiest. Ryan
Okay.
Began. I think there's not too many Ryan Begans out there, but yeah, that's the easiest place.
Awesome. And if you are on YouTube watching this video, we will put a link to Ryan's LinkedIn profile down below so that you can connect with him, ask questions, and learn from him because I think you are a wealth of knowledge about leadership. I'm excited to see what's next for you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Kathy.